Hi, Stephen.
Michelle, what happened to all the music? I used to get like a little dance in there, but
We were too busy chatting, and I
without
completely forgot. I
dogs.
lost track of time. It's time to go live. We don't have time for the countdown. Here we are.
Here we are. Hey, everybody. Stephen Feuerstein, Michelle
Michelle
Stone.
Scammony.
Some of you might have seen us a couple hours ago when we did a little talk on Apex D2D. So this is my pre-Thanksgiving Feuer tip in which I don't really give a tip. I just talk about some things I'm thankful for in my life, somewhat mostly around PLSQL. And then there'll be some tips along with that. And then I've got a great book that I just read recently that I think people would really enjoy, and got a couple of organizations to pick from to help save our planet from humans. So before we do that though, let's give everybody a reminder about Apex D2D. So if you could share my screen.
Oh, yep, sure thing.
And let's go over
Go.
there. So hopefully all of you know by now, but I'll give you a reminder. So Apex D2D is a new initiative from 4 different Apex groups who have come together to build a free site where you can get help from other Apex and database developers. The launch of the actual program is on November 30th, when you'll actually get your sessions with your experts, but hopefully it'll continue past then. Right now, if you have a question about how to get something done in Apex or in SQL or PLSQL, and you're looking for some help, go to apexd2d.net, get signed in as a helper or a helpee or a developer. Anyway, then you can search a session. So for example, I'm already signed in, so I can say get help. I can then search for my sessions, look for somebody who matches on a given topic. And there are a lot of people out there who are ready to help. And then you can click on it. You can reserve the session, ask for help, describe your problem. So this is, we think, is a great new initiative. But right now, the challenge is we've got over 300 hours of help lined up for you, for the community, on November 30th. And the challenge is to fill all those time slots.
Yeah, the community really stepped up. Lots of people have come up. Look, 397 helpers from around the world have volunteered their time on November 30th. So we've got lots of available spots. Just sign up, grab your session. There's some sessions, Stephen, you've made yourself available for a few hours.
I've set aside 5.5 hours on Tuesday the 30th. One person has grabbed my first session on actually Wednesday evening for me. So all these 30-minute slots are available. If you need some help on PLSQL, you just want me to review some code, grab a slot. Okay, stop sharing, please.
Yes. And I just wanted to say, as you mentioned, we did a pretty thorough run through about how it works this morning. We'll drop a link to that video in the description here. So if you want to sort of take a look and get more details about how it actually works, how to sign up either as a helper or someone needing help, we'll put the link to that video in the description.
All right, great. So let's move on to things that I'm thankful for. And of course, Michelle, you should chime in as well. So I'm not going to look back on my whole life, which has many, many ups, and of course, a down now and then. I want to focus on what I'm thankful for in the technical context. So, which means I have to start with my parents.
Okay, I love that.
Now, so if you could share my screen again. I just managed to find this picture before we got started. So this is my dad. He died in 2010. Great guy, really quite a Renaissance man in so many ways. My mom, still around in Florida, enjoying life. So the context for this picture is years ago at a K-Scope it was in Florida at a racetrack. I can't remember the name, Daytona. My parents actually came to the conference and they saw me speak for the first time. It was great. And afterwards, I asked them what they thought about it. And my dad said, there wasn't anything new. I knew all of that. And the context for there is that he was a lawyer and mostly an accountant. He self-taught himself RPG. He was really quite amazing. He used to program on Texas Instrument calculators. Anyway, I thought that was just such a great answer. My mom, of course, said, you talk too fast. Now, in terms of being thankful, what I mostly want to be thankful to them about, first of all, my dad was so hard on me in terms of high expectations around school and learning and being able to think logically and clearly, helped me a lot. And enjoyed reading books, but my mom loved to read books. And I remember every Sunday afternoon, without fail, we would all head off to the library. We'd pick out a whole bunch of books. We'd spend the whole week reading those books, go back to the library on Sunday, get more books. And that love of reading has not only enriched my life generally, but it made me, I think, a pretty good writer. So one of the things I think that people forget and that we're losing as we move to, who reads anymore? You just watch stuff. is we lose the ability to learn from all the writing, all the patterns of writing that we read, so that we can write and speak better ourselves. So thank you so much, Mom, for getting me to love reading so much and to drill it in. Okay.
Stephen, Jamal agrees that sometimes you do talk fast.
Can you stop sharing?
I will stop sharing.
So sorry about that, Jamal. And by the way, I'm going to take that as a request. Please slow down. And that is always a valid question in any of my sessions, in any of my trainings. Stephen, could you please stop talking so fast? So Judith, remember the amazing paintings of your dad? Yes, the paintings are actually, several of them are up on the wall right here. My dad,
wow.
He was actually quite a good artist, but he had to stop when he was young to focus on earning money for his family, but kind of kept up with it all through his life. Yeah, my dad was a pretty incredible guy. So I'm very thankful that they got me pointed in a direction so that when I made some fateful choices around career, all these advantages helped accrue to me. So next up, oddly enough, I want to be thankful.
Can I? Yeah. I'm just going to ask you to readjust your camera because you're looking really tiny next to me, which is not something that I often say.
How's that?
I'm usually the one that looks like the midget next to anybody.
All right. So next up on thankfulness. So clearly, my life changed a lot when I got into Oracle technology, and particularly when I wrote and published the first book. But funnily enough, one of the main reasons I got my job at Oracle, which was as a pre-sales person, helping to sell the stuff, getting up in front of people and doing the dog and pony show. All right, Jamal, thanks, appreciate it. I'll talk really fast now. Was the fact that I was very involved in essentially left-wing organizing in the United States. So back in the 80s, I was very involved in protesting what the United States government under Ronald Reagan, who seems like such a nice guy now, but he actually wasn't a really nice guy. Anyway, he was leading a campaign to essentially devastate lots of Central America, kill lots of Central Americans, especially Salvadorans, and I was very involved in protesting that. And I eventually became part of the national council of this group called CISPACE, Committee in Solidarity with the People of El Salvador. And I would give talks, small groups, large groups, whatever. And so one of the key questions that John Cordell, my manager-to-be, had for me was not about relational database. I studied the 12 rules of relational database. He never asked me a single question about relational databases. He wanted to know what my experience was in presenting to people and whether I could, get up in front of a group and talk. As people have since discovered, no problem. Me getting up in front of a group of people and talking. But anyway, I could say, sure, I've done this, that, and the other. And I thought, oh, this is going to sink me for sure. And I went. So my political organizing actually helped me get my technical job. Kind of took off from there. Okay, so obviously I can't reminisce. I could reminisce all day long, but that must get boring. So let's shift into the technical realm now. Now, what I want to talk about are some things that I'm thankful about in PLSQL. So share my screen.
I will share your screen.
Let's pull up some code. So this is the code base for D2D that I've been working on. Been writing a lot of code. We already have, I think, probably 4,000 or 5,000 lines of code for this relatively simple app already. And it's been a joy to realize and be reinforced how powerful and how productive this whole tech stack is. Oracle database, SQL, PLSQL, amazing. But Apex, talk about being thankful. I am so thankful for Apex, Application Express, because it lets me be involved in building websites. Who would ever have thought that would be possible? But what I want to be thankful for specifically around PLSQL right now is it's just kind of simple and clear and readable and easy to write and easy to maintain. So I know that JavaScript and Java and many of the languages are way more powerful than PLSQL. They should be. They're general purpose programming languages. But for database programming languages, actually, I don't even think it's a contest. I think everybody will acknowledge it. PLSQL is far and away the best, the most structured, the most well organized, the most comprehensive, the most feature rich. And for me, what's just so wonderful about it is that it's so simple and readable. So the folks at Oracle who decided to build PLSQL, fortunately were wise enough to not say, we can design a programming language better than anybody else, which any software companies tends to think that way. Back then, this is the late 80s. Instead, they said, let's use an existing language as a model. And they chose between PL1 and Ada, and they decided on Ada. So this is essentially a variant of Ada. And it's just so easy to read. create a procedure. Here's the name. Here's the stuff coming in or out. Let's begin the executable section. If there's an exception section, my God, there must be an exception section here. Yes. Then I say, this is the exception section. When anything went wrong, do the following. It's so easy to read, and I think pretty easy to write PLSQL. And for that, I'm really thankful for, because I'm no rocket scientist. I'm not even a computer scientist. I have a bachelor's degree in math, and I lost interest in math in like my junior year, lost interest in terms of more interest in politics and philosophy and poetry. And I only took like 3 college classes in computer science in my whole career. So I'm essentially a self-taught developer, which you could get away with back then. It's harder now. But believe me, if they had picked some object-oriented language, I don't know if I could have done it. I don't know if I could have written a book about it. And life, of course, would be very different. So I'm thankful that they chose Ada. Thankful that it's not some fancy, smancy language with lots of squiggles in it. Doesn't take much to make me thankful, does it?
Rachel shared also, Stephen, grateful to have found database and BI work along with a great community of Oracle developers.
It really is a great community. And it's changed a lot over the years in the sense that in the early days when I was with Oracle, think about consultants, right? So all the independent folks out there. Back then, I think people were not really good at sharing the way they are today. Part of it might have been that we don't have mediums that facilitate and encourage it. But back then, there was CompuServe, there was email. But back then also, I think many consultants used their knowledge as a leverage point in the marketplace because there were relatively few consultants. It was just growing. And so their knowledge to them was really key to their success. So I think in the early days of Oracle, we didn't have a strong sharing approach, and that hurt us in a number of ways. But now, my God, especially with Apex, the commitment to community, the commitment to help each other, really, it's outstanding. And I think Apex D2D is a great example in that 4 different companies that work hard to make money off of Apex got together to build and offer this website to everybody.
Mm-hmm. I'll echo what Rachel says about gratitude around finding work in the space. I don't know if you remember, Stephen, back in May, Anton and Hayden during an Instant Tips episode, it was shortly after Joel passed away, they invited members of the community to come on and kind of share memories, their experience of Joel. And Jorge Rembles came on, and he was remembering the moment that he was able to share with Joel that, hey, I'm actually turning Apex into, this has now become my living. I'm able to earn an income, and a good one at that, doing something that I love, just working exclusively with Apex. And I'll say that really resonated with me. I'm absolutely grateful as well to be able to have earned a living and do work with a tool that we all love. And so yeah, Rachel, I'm with you.
Sure, I'm sure that Joel and I are similar enough that I can say that for Joel, that was probably the highest sort of compliment and praise he could get. For me, getting an email, I just put something out on Twitter about it. Getting an email or a comment from a developer saying, essentially your book helped me provide a good life for my family.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't the book, it was them using my book. But anyway, but I don't really care about helping companies make money or being better with Oracle PLSQL. What I care about is all the people who have been able to have better lives because of my writing and sharing. So yes, lots to be thankful for there. Mm-hmm. Back to the technical side, please share my screen. So there, I could go on.
Actually, you stopped sharing yours, so I can't share.
I did. I have to reshare. That was the only way I could get it to go away. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay.
Now we're good. So I wanted to talk about a couple of specific features of PLSQL that just really drive home for me how lovely it is to work with. So one of them is table functions. So a table function, I've done like 4 Feuertips sessions on them, or 5, I don't remember. So I'm not going to go into great detail on it. But basically a table function is a function that returns an array that can be treated as if it were a relational table inside your query. So when we first started building the Apex D2D app, what I started to do is build out this back-end API that the front-end developers can then use. And it's been an incredibly powerful, productive way to write applications. And I've been doing this with Bernadette Lazar, who's part of the InSum team as well. She's been helping me on the back end. So I decided rather than our front end developers having to write all sorts of different queries against the sessions table, sessions for this person, for that person, for this time, for that time, I decided I'd write a single table function that did all the querying inside here with all the this, that's, and the others, builds out the session list, and then returns it. So by building this one thing, now let's go over to the app. Let's go into the back end, because why not? So now you get to look at some of our code. So there's a screen that lets you do a search for sessions. So that's what, if I request a session, the query is producing these tiles, these cards. So if we go down to that query, I'll say two things. One, I didn't manage.
Sorry, Stephen, can I just ask you to plus up a little bit, because that's a little bit hard to read, especially with the dark theme. That's great. Thank you.
Sure. Let's close that and reopen it. So the query driving that cards region is still pretty complex. In fact, I think we're going to work on, well, anyway, I'll show you, but we have two different calls to D2D sessions 4. So this function is being called twice inside this query. I think the other one's up here. Yeah, right here. And you can see he's passing different parameter combinations to get the data sets out that he needs instead of having to figure it all out inside the query. And in fact, I still have to go back and refactor this query because I think they're not using it as much as they could. But bottom line is, boy, do I love table functions. They give you so much flexibility. Not only can you hide complex SQL, which is what the main purpose of this table function is for, but you can literally just build up data sets from procedural logic. They don't have to come from other tables at all. So really wonderful feature. Love it, love it, love it. And the other
that's a really great use case. And I know that you did a Feuer tip on table functions in the past, but I wonder if it might not be worth diving in, to this specific example a bit more in a future one. I'd definitely love for you to present it at a techno lunch at INSIM to your colleagues. That's great.
Sure. And the other just, there are so many features we can talk about, like the fact that there are packages and exception handling. All of that is adapted, brought in from Ada. But the other thing that I just really love are nested subprograms. So what you see here is this function, is it available? And is it available is actually built on top of sessions 4. So I just call it with a specific set of parameters. And then I have my cleanup, and I also have my wow. I have my time to do some debugging. I didn't call my initialized procedure here. Okay, so I need to do compiling with warnings. Look, we're going to do some bug fixing.
Code review on the fly. I hope you're working in dev here.
I'm working in my file right now. So the nice thing is that I can consolidate logic that would otherwise junk up my main block of code. So all of this could be here. Let's save that before I do anything else. So I could have all this stuff here and all the cleanup logic. I guess that's where cleanup should go. So this procedure could look like this. Again, read the code, and finally I get to the main point. Here's the main point. Here's the real code. But all of that is obscured by having it all dumped in the executable section. So I just love to shrink it down. In fact, again, I'm going to do some fixing up here. We need a cleanup right before the return. Get rid of all this to just call initialize. So I think that nested subprograms are probably one of the most important techniques you can use to refactor your code to make it more readable, more maintainable, and just a joy to read. Now it's easy to focus on the main logic in my program. So nested subprograms, the way to go. You can also have a lot of private subprograms in your package body. But if this thing is only being used here, initialize and clean up for this procedure, you want to define them in here. And if any of you are wondering, INSIM debug is essentially our version at INSIM of Logger. We built a layer of code that essentially matches the Logger API, but is built on top of Apex debug. We may talk more about that in the future, but it's essentially the same idea. So table functions, love them. Nested subprograms, can't live without them.
And not to make this all about Apex D2D, but this sort of exercise of code review and refactoring, this is like your special skill, right? So definitely sign up for a session with Steven if you're interested in just doing a code review session with him.
And why don't you go ahead and stop my share?
Yes.
Do we have any other comments?
Rachel has a question, actually. Why a nested subprogram instead of a local scope procedure or function?
I think they're the same. I'm not sure why a nested subprogram. So a nested subprogram means a procedure or function that's declared within another procedure or function. Which do you mean by local scope, Rachel? Do you mean a packaged private subprogram, a procedure or function inside the package body that does not appear in the spec? That's the usual kind of question I get. I'm going to answer that question. Why make it nested inside a procedure versus making it at a peer level, another private subprogram in your package body? Excellent. And the reason is very simple. It's all a matter of what makes the most sense. So if I'm building out, I've got a big program and I want to go back and refactor it. There are several kinds of refactorings that can occur. One of them could be simply, I've got a bunch of different chunks of code that are specific to this procedure, but I don't want to gum up the process of reading my code. I want to make it more readable. So I literally pull it out and replace it with a call to a procedure with the name that says do X as opposed to a comment about to do X. That chunk of code isn't going to be used by any other procedure or function. Now, another approach, you can move it outside of that scope into its own private subprogram, but then you may have to basically pull out all the local references to variables in that procedure and make them parameters, which you could argue makes it a more appropriate procedure. But anyway, it can be more complex. If it's only going to be used inside that one procedure, I'd say keep it in there. Now, if you're refactoring this big procedure and you look at 20 lines of code and you think, that looks just like 20 lines of code up there and 20 lines, oh, I should make one function to do this in all different places. Then you want to pull it out. So if you think that today or soon that logic would be used in more than one place, then don't put it inside a procedure or function. Put it at pure level in the package body. It's hard for somebody to take upon himself the writing of a good Apex book built with head and legs, kind of similar to your PLSQL programming books. Yes, Judith, I know we've talked in the past. Judith has struggled to find good resources on Apex that talk about kind of the foundation of the architecture, how it's all put together. And I'm definitely not the right person to do it. Wouldn't have the patience to write that much of a book. But hopefully that will happen. One of the issues you get with a tool like Apex is that it changes so rapidly with each new release. Any UI-based and driven tool has that problem. It's a good problem. They're constantly improving it. For me, I'm so glad that I wrote a book about PLSQL because 95, coming on 30 years later, Yeah. Most of the book is still completely valid. There's stuff to add to it, but it stayed the same. So
the other challenge with Apex is, you can go from the whole low code, drag and drop, Excel to app in minutes to, the very, very sophisticated type applications. One might argue that Apex D2D is one of those. There's some things that are using the low code components. Otherwise, we've seen the thousands of lines of PLSQL code that you've done to sort of help things along. It's just so rich, and to do this, everything in the right order, it could actually become quite a massive undertaking. But Judith, you certainly are not the first to feel a little bit lost and not know exactly where to start. So,
and post another comment too. What the heck?
Yes.
So, and Judith has some not so great things to say about the page designer in Application Builder. I get it. It has these 3 different regions. I never use that middle design region. I'm sure some people do, but I never do.
It's funny. I always compress that as well. And so interesting.
So, give your feedback on Twitter or wherever else, or to the team, or log some ideas for enhancements. I'm sure they look at it every time and try to figure out how to improve it. But of course, then there's this issue of, sure, we completely redesigned the page builder, and everybody hates it because it's different. Right. So it's always a tough thing to deal with.
Rachel appreciated your clarification on that.
That's nice. I appreciate that. So any thoughts from you, Michelle, on things in Apex World or PLSQL that you've been thankful for? I know you've mentioned some. from our listeners?
Yeah, I guess I would say, so I have 3 kids. Well, 2 of them are big now, but I can't, and you sort of touched on this at the start of the show as well. I can't think of any other job that would have given me the same amount of coolness factor with my kids, other than maybe being, I don't know, a professional soccer football
Wrestler.
player or something like that. But like hearing my kids refer to me as, my mom builds apps, my mom develops apps. I think that's, I'm very grateful for that. I'm definitely like, what more can a mom ask for than to be seen as cool in front of her kids? So, whether it was the fitness challenge app I did for my son, or the reading log program, for like they've always been super proud that their mom develops apps. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that. I have to say.
Hey, is anybody on the call grateful for the central pain of the page designer?
Oh, yeah.
It's worthless. Neither of us use it. I'm sure people do. So if any of you do have good things to say about it and why it's good, feel free to let us know here. Maybe we'll get a thread going on Twitter about that too. That would be good. All right. Well, it's 11:26. I could go on and on, but I know at least in the United States, everybody's thinking about tomorrow and getting on with
Turkey Day.
a nice long weekend. So let's switch gears now. So first of all, you're going to pick a person who's going to pick the organization. Is that right? I'll show the organizations while you're thinking about that.
Just quickly, Plowman uses it for the help. That's true, actually. The help within the Apex Builder is extremely rich. And I think Anton and Hayden did a whole session on that. I think it's very underutilized. People don't realize how you can click on the right side. Anything that you click pulls up pretty rich help information in the middle. So yeah, thanks for that. How about, I feel we must have already asked Jamal, but Jamal, Jamal, if you're still around, if you want to pick, I'll share your screen. Help.
So Jamal, pick among these organizations, and if Jamal's not around still, then we'll find somebody else. But I've got 3 different groups. One is Center for Biological Diversity. You've heard me talk about them before. They really are at the lead in the United States of essentially suing various governments to stop driving species to extinction. I don't have enough time to describe how impressive they've been, how successful they've been, and how much support they need. They do it on a real shoestring budget. So Center for Biological Diversity, fight extinctions. Octopuses, so amazing, so wonderful, such a demonstration of how our intelligence is not the only intelligence even on our planet. And we should not be talking about how important we are because we're the only intelligent ones and search for other. Anyway, octopuses are truly incredible beasts, animals. And bees, oh my God, do we need bees? So we need to help save the bees. So bees, octopuses, or Center for Biological Diversity, let us know which one you'd like us to contribute $25 to. And my cultural artifact of the week, it's a book called Children of Time. I read this about a month ago. This book won the Arthur C. Clarke Award in 2016, which is pretty impressive in the world of science fiction. A guy named Adrian Tchaikovsky, and it was a very enjoyable book to read, in part because I not only like science fiction, but as you may know, I'm really enamored with evolution by natural selection. And he's going in deep on books that have all sorts of evolutionary themes driven deep into them. I'm reading another book of his that has even more of it. And I won't go into the details because it would just give away too much. But number one, the beginning of the book is just fantastic. It's this big buildup of this person's planning. And then I don't want to give it away. Okay, but here's the thing. One of the elements in this book, when you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, is that ant colonies are used as computational machines. So think about that one. And if you think it would be interesting to find out how could ant colonies be converted into computers, you should check out this book. All right. Do we have a selection on organizations?
We do. Jamal says it's difficult, but goes with bees.
Bees, thank you. Yes, that's good. And in fact, Oracle has been very involved with an organization in the UK providing technology and funding to help track bees so thank you very much, Jamal. Could you stop?
I just quickly wanted to put Anton's comment up about how he redoes the layout of the page designer.
Can you stop sharing my screen for a second?
I am.
Oh, great. I reconfigured to put okay. Mm-hmm.
Use the layout to get an understanding of region hierarchy, that for sure. And I think that's even more important now in I haven't played with it much, but in 21.2, I think it gets a lot more sophisticated. You have a lot more flexibility with where to put items and components, and I think that's going to be more and more important. So thanks
One
for
last
that,
thing to be
Anton.
thankful for. Can you put up Judith's comment? Many parents. So many parents would definitely not want their children to choose the same profession. So funny you say that, Judith. So my younger son, Eli, wanted to be a musician. His passion is still musician. But a number of years ago, this is, wow, a long time ago. I'm trying to remember when. Anyway, but at least 10 years ago, he came to me and said, my girlfriend's making more money than I am. Unacceptable. I need to get a better job, which is he was trying to get a job as a musician. Very hard. He wanted to go back to school. He wasn't sure what he wanted to study. I said, you know what? I'm working on this website, the PLSQL Challenge, which became the Dev Gym. I'll hire you to do some coding for me. He had zero programming background. His background is in music and music theory. And Eli is now a senior member of consulting staff at Oracle on the Apex team, reporting to Shakib Rahman. I am so proud of him. He's been there since I joined in 2014. We're actually both glad I left Oracle because it's actually, in a way, freed him up to pursue his career without being under my shadow. So thank you, Apex. Thank you, Oracle Database, for providing technology that a person without any formal programming background at all could step into and be so successful with. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a great manager.
And this comment that I love from Rachel, thank you both. Grateful that you took the time to do this segment. No coworkers or help. I appreciate you both. Rachel, we appreciate you too.
And we appreciate you even more if you go to make sure that you signed up for sessions on Apex D2D and spread the word. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you have for those of us in the United States or expats outside of the country, but still U.S. citizens, I hope you have a very healthy, happy Thanksgiving with safe gatherings of your family and friends.
Yes.
And we'll hopefully see some of you next week on Apex D2D Day.
Yep.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.